Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Prabhuta Virut Trinagulma Gavare.
Prabhutam Virutu Trinagulma Gavare.
Khatora Damser Ashakair Upadruta.
Katharo Damsir Maskare Upadruta.
Vachittu Gandharva Puram Prapashyati.
Kavochit Tu Gandharva Puram Papashyati.
Kvachit Kvachit Chashu Prayol Mukha Graham.
Kavachit Kavicha Chasho Mukha Garam.
Did we not read this yesterday?
Yeah, I'm just thinking that I think the 13th verse is the next, isn't it?
We should do 6.
Yes, Prabhuji, we have read the third one. 6th.
Yeah. Sorry, 13.5, I think, isn't it?
6 we have to.
6.
Yeah, 5.
It's
5
6.
is the next.
Yeah.
Adarshya Jilit Swana Karana Sura.
So text 5 or text 6?
6 one.
I think
6.
5. I have marked here in the 5.
Yeah. 4 we
Okay, we'll
read.
go with
Yeah, G Prabhuji, we have to start from 5. We haven't read the 5th one.
Okay, Hare Krishna. Adrasya Jili Swanakarna Shula
Adrashya Chili Swana Karana Shula.
Uluka Vagbir Vyatitha Antaratma.
Uluka Vapipir Vyahitan Taratma.
Apunya Vrikshan Shayate Shudara Rito
Apunya Vrikshan Shayata Kshuthatita.
Marichi Toyani Abidvati Kvachit.
Marichi Toyani Abhivaviti Vachit.
Somebody like to read the verse, please? Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Swami Prabhupada. Translation. Wandering in the forest of the material world, the conditioned soul sometimes hears an invisible cricket making harsh sounds, and his ears become very much aggrieved. Sometimes his heart is pained by the sounds of owls, which are like harsh words of his enemies. Sometimes he takes shelter of a tree that has no fruits or flowers. He approaches such a tree due to a strong appetite, and thus he suffers. He would like to acquire water, but he is simply illusioned by a mirage, and he runs after it. Purport. In the Srimad Bhagavatam it is said, Bhagavata philosophy is meant for people who are completely free from envy. Paramo Nirmat Saranam. The material world is full of envious people. Even within one's inner circle, there is much backbiting. This is compared to the sound vibration of cricket in the forest. One cannot see the cricket, but one hears the sounds and thus becomes aggrieved. One takes a Krishna consciousness. One always hears unpalatable words from relatives. This is the nature of the world. One cannot avoid mental distress due to backbiting of envious people. Being very much aggrieved, sometimes one goes to a sinful person for help. But he has no means to help because he has no intelligence. Thus, the living entity is disappointed. This is like running after a mirage in the desert in an effort to find water. Such activities do not produce tangible results. Due to being directed by the illusory energy, a conditioned soul suffers in so many ways. Hare Krishna. So, continuing the past few verses, in this we see the example of wandering the forest of the material world and how we see and are exposed to different things and we think it is something else, like invisible cricket making harsh sounds. And then the ears become very aggrieved and the heart is pained by sounds of owls, which are like the harsh words of the enemies. So multiple things we are hankering for, we go towards it, but it's actually something else. And like in the um, earlier few verses, Prabhupada has written in his purport that the human being always tries to find something better which will lead to permanent happiness, but that is not the case to be. Always when one gets closer, it's like a mirage. From far away, it looks like it can be achieved and something that will lead to something better. And Prabhupada says that one has to learn to live within the circumstances one has, basis the karma and where you are at, rather than always hankering for something else. Because always there would be counter viewpoints. If you try to go one way, other people will pull you back. And then always there is confusion as to what one has to do, and people keep suffering. So, like he would like to acquire water, but he is simply illusioned by a mirage, and he keeps running after something or hankering after something. Hare Krishna. Would somebody else like to add to that, please?
Yeah, I think this is the nature of every living entity. If you don't have the knowledge of Krishna, then you will just hanker for material happiness if you don't have any higher taste or understanding. So this is going to happen.
True, Mata. And having knowledge that one taking shelter of Krishna is the only way that we can get away from this hankering is very important. And then through through a guru and guru parampara, one has to take shelter of the Lord. And that's the only way to get out of that, for sure. Hare Krishna. So we read next 5.13.6. Pachit vitoyaha sarito abhyati
Kavchit Vituha
Sarito Virayati
parasparam chalasate niranda
Parasparam Chalasate Niranda
asadya davam pachit agni tapto
Asadhidavam
Tavyam Kachit Agni Tapto
nirvidyate kvacha yaksher hritashu.
Nirviditi Kaviche Yakshar
Tashu.
Somebody like to read the translation in purport?
Okay, I can read.
Mataji.
Nobody else doesn't want to read. So translation of purport by Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki's Jai. Sometimes the conditioned soul jumps into the swallow river, or being short of food grains, he goes to the beg food from people who are not at all charitable. Sometimes he suffers from the burning heat of the household for life, which is like a forest fire, and sometimes he becomes sad to have his wealth, which is a dear as a life, plundered by the kings in the name of heavy income taxes. Purport. When one is hot due to the scorching sun, one sometimes jumps into the river to gain relief. However, if the river is almost dried up and the water is too shallow, one may break his bones by jumping in. The conditioned soul is always experiencing miserable conditions. Sometimes his efforts to get help from the friends are exactly like a jumping into the dry river. By such actions, he does not derive any benefit. He only breaks his bones. Sometimes suffering from the shortage of the food, one may go to the person who is neither able to give charity nor willing to do so. Sometimes one is stationed in household life, which is compared to a forest fire, samsara davala didhaloka. When a man is heavily taxed by the government, he becomes very sad. Heavy taxation obligates one to hide his income, but despite his endeavor, the government endeavor to government agents are often so vigilant and strong that they take all the money anyway, and the condition soul becomes very aggrieved. Thus, people are trying to become happy within the material world, but this is like trying to be happy in the forest fire. No one need to go to forest to set it ablaze. Fire takes place automatically. Similarly, no one wants to be unhappy in the family life or worldly life, but by the laws of the nature, unhappiness and distress are forced upon everyone. To become dependent on the other's maintenance is very degrading. Therefore, according to the Vedic system, everyone should live independently. Only the Sudras are unable to live independently. They are obliged to serve someone for the maintenance. It is said in the Shastras, Kaula Shudra Sambhava. In this age of Kali, everyone is dependent on the other's mercy for the maintenance of the body. Therefore, everyone is classified as a Sudra. In the 12th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said that in the Kali Yuga, the government will levy taxes without reciprocationally benefiting the citizens. Anavristya vinakshanti durpiksha karapiditaha. In this age, there will also be shortage of the rain. Therefore, a scarcity of food will arise, and the citizens will be very much harassed by the government taxations. In this way, the citizens will be abandoned their attempts to lead a peaceful life and will leave their homes and hearts, and heats, and go to the forest in the sheer disappointment. Okay, so the translation was sometimes the conditioned soul jumps in the shallow river or charitable. Sometimes he becomes said to have his wealth, which is as dear as life, plundered by the kings in the name of heavy income taxes. Okay, so if I can comment something about this verse, very practical verse, and for us, we can kind of understand this point very much because most of us, we are in this situation ourselves. So, what does it mean then? We are like this example of forest fire, or being in the house which is in the fire has been given. Like, I don't know how long I've been hearing that example, maybe as long as I've been coming to ISKCON, but it was always given that if you are in the house which is in the fire, you don't start to look there, okay, where is my this, where is my that? No, you just run and try to get out of that house. You don't think what you will left behind. So our situation is the same. We are like in the forest fire, or our house is burning, or at least we should have that kind of understanding that situation is really so bad, and we shouldn't be too comfortable in our situations, because they are not going to last, and we should understand that everything is temporary and going to end sooner or later. So we should try to do these kind of arrangements, that we are trying to leave these things and try to understand that these things which are happening around us all the time on the material platform are not the goal of life. Never. Just to surrender to Krishna and try to serve him somehow or other. That's the purpose of life. Not that, I mean, if we don't do that, we will become like these people who are trying to pacify their heat, trying to get some relief by jumping in the river but it will just break their bones. So this is happening many times. We are also, or if I'm talking to myself, we are trying to find some solutions, some easy solutions. Okay, this will help me. After I do this, then I will feel better. So, but most of the time, then that will just cause more pain, or at least that is not going to help you out, at least in Krishna consciousness. So we need to remember this and trying to make some efforts that we can get out of this situation, at least not that we will go deeper and deeper and have more and more attachments. So is there something else maybe? Yes, and the thing is that still even people are suffering so much. You can see if you just look outside the window, all the people are suffering so much. They're not really too happy. Even they would have all the wealth of the world or whatever, so much money, beauty, this and that. Like we see the celebrities or some famous people, politicians, they have so much money, more money than anyone has, and still they are so unhappy. So these things never can give you any happiness, because everything is on the mundane level, and if you don't have any interest to know Krishna or develop yourself, develop your relationship with God, then you can never achieve any happiness in this world. Everything is just on the mundane platform, and the happiness what you are sometimes getting is very temporary and not going to give you any permanent relief, as Krishna consciousness is always going to be the topmost relief. That is going to give, we can experience it ourselves if we are doing some nice service, if we are preaching or serving devotees or whatever we are doing in Krishna consciousness, we can sometimes feel that kind of genuine happiness that I'm like really doing something useful for the society. So then we can have these kind of realizations that this is what it means to be happy in Krishna consciousness, by serving Krishna and have that as a goal of life, not that we are just trying to achieve something in this world. Yes. Okay. Somebody else have something else to comment, please. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna. So in this age of Kali, everyone is dependent on another's mercy for the maintenance of the body. Therefore, everybody is classified as a Sudra, because in this age we are dependent on somebody else for either the work or any help. Hare Krishna.
Liisa Matatsi, laitatko minuutille sen mikrofoni pois päältä? Kiitos. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So, government will levy taxes without reciprocally benefiting the citizens. So Prabhupada says the household life, which is compared to a forest fire, samsara davanala neither loka. So the if it is like compared to a forest fire, but the only way to extinguish this, one should approach a guru who can extinguish the blazing fire of this material world, the struggle for existence. People want to be cheated. Therefore, so one has to go to a bona fide guru. Otherwise, in this Kali Yuga, there are too many gurus who also, like this is the same thing. So you're in a fire, you want help, you go there, and Prabhupada compares it to like falling into a shallow river and breaking your bones. So you think there is a guru who can help you, but there are yogis and swamis who play tricks, and they do not mitigate the miseries of material life. For some time, it will look like it's peaceful, but eventually it'll go back to the same thing, and one realizes that one has unnecessarily wasted time. The same way, in this age, there will be shortage of rain and therefore scarcity of food. So basically, in Kali Yuga, the laws of nature. Unhappiness and distress are forced upon everybody. One can try to work very hard to mitigate this, but eventually it is a mirage like we've seen, and it is going to be difficult to overcome. So again, it's the same thing that association of devotees taking shelter of Guru, a bona fide Guru, and taking shelter in the names of the Lord in Kali Yuga is the only way that we can mitigate this. Otherwise, one is going to suffer more and more from illusion. Illusion being like, oh, there is happiness here, and then you find out that it's actually not true lasting happiness. So you will be forced upon suffering by the government, the people around you, the people that you work for, and the only way to mitigate this is by taking the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna. Would somebody else like to add to that, please? Okay, we go forward. 5.13.7. Surair Hritasva cha nirvinna chetaha
Shurashrita Swaha Kvacha Nirvinna
Sochan Vimuhyan Upayati Kasmalam
Swachan
Vacha Vimohayan Upayati Kasmalam
Kvachitcha Gandharva Puram Pravistaha
Kavicche Gandharva
Gandharva Puram Pravistaha
Pramodate Nirvritam Muhurtam.
Pramodite
Pramodate Nivrittam Muhurtayam.
Would somebody like to read, please?
Hare Krishna. Okay, I read Prabhu, but the comment you pass, you take it there.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, please read.
Quite a big purport.
Sure, Prabhu.
So I read translation purport. You kindly put the comment. Translation
Sure.
purport of Shri Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah.
Sometimes being defeated or plundered by a superior, powerful agent, a living entity loses all his possessions. He then becomes very morose and lamenting their loss. He sometimes becomes unconscious. Sometimes he imagines a great palatial city in which he desires to live happily with his family members and riches. He thinks himself fully satisfied if this is possible. But such so-called happiness continues only for a moment. But the word Gandharvapuram is very significant in this verse. Sometimes in the forest, a very big castle appears, and this is called a castle in the air. Actually, the castle does not exist anywhere, but is one's imagination. This is called Gandharvapura. In the material forest, the conditional soul sometimes contemplates great castle and skyscrapers, and he wastes his energy for such things, hoping to live in them very peacefully with his family forever. However, the laws of nature do not allow this. When it enters such castle, he temporarily thinks that he is very happy, even though his happiness is impermanent. His happiness may last for a few years, but because the owner of the castle has to leave the castle in the time of death, everything is eventually lost. This is the way of worldly transaction. Such happiness is described by Vidyapith sorry, as the happiness one derives upon seeing a drop of water in the desert. The desert is heated by scorching sunshine, and if we want to reduce the desert temperature, we need huge amounts of water, millions and millions of gallons. What effect will one drop have? Water certainly has value, but one drop of water can reduce the heat of the desert. In this material world, everything is ambitious, but the heat is very scorching. What will an imaginary castle in there do to help? Sri Vidyapati has therefore sang Tatale Sakte Varibindu Sama Suta Mita Ramni Samad. The happiness of the family life, friends and society is compared to a drop of water in the scorching heat, desert. The entire material world is busy trying to attain happiness because happiness is the prerogative of the living beings. Unfortunately, due to falling in the contact with the material world, the living entity will simply struggles for existence, even if one becomes happy for a while. A very powerful enemy may plunder everything. There are many instances in which big businessmen suddenly became paupers in the street. Yet the nature of the material existence is such that foolish people are attracted to these transactions and they forget the real business of the self-realization. Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Dhanavad.
Hare Krishna. So, Srila Vidyapati is a great Vaishnava poet, and he has sung Tatala Saikate Vari Bindu Sama Sutamita Ramani Samaje. Material sense gratification with society, friendship, and love is compared to a drop of water falling on a desert. A desert requires oceans of water to satisfy it, and only a drop of water is supplied. What is its use? Similarly, living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has stated in Vedanta Sutras, Anandamayo Vyasat, full of enjoyment. Being part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, living entity is also seeking complete enjoyment. However, complete enjoyment cannot be achieved separate from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In his wanderings in different species of life, living entity may taste some type of enjoyment in one body or the other, but full enjoyment of the senses cannot be obtained in any material body. So, this is in Bhagavatam 4.25 purport from Prabhupada. Puranjana, the living entity, wanders in different types of body, but everywhere he meets frustration in his attempt to enjoy. The spiritual spark covered by matter cannot fully enjoy the senses in any circumstances of material life. So we also read about the story of the well, where a man being chased by a tiger, he falls into the well, and he catches onto a branch on the way down, and below he sees a big serpent waiting to bite him. And the branch is being bitten at by a rat or a rodent, and any moment he could fall into the well. And at that moment, he looks up and there is honey dripping from the tree above. And he tastes this honey and he says, "Oh, it is so enjoyable." And that single moment of tasting the honey, he enjoys it. But he forgets all of the dangers that lie around him. And he is blissfully unaware at that point in time, thinking this to be his entire creation and existence. When in reality, he is forced down by duality and there is suffering all around. And he simply forgets it for the honey that is dripping down from the tree. So, this is the, like Prabhupada says, Gandharvapuram. It is like a castle in the sky, which is just a mirage. And we contemplate great castles and skyscrapers and we waste our energy hoping to live in them peacefully forever. But laws of nature do not allow this. And it's so temporary and it's like compared to castle in the air, it's compared to the mirage in the desert, it's compared to one drop of water that we can get in a desert. The heat is very scorching of the material world. And so therefore, we are simply struggling for existence and we are trying to get this happiness. So even one becomes happy for a while, a powerful enemy could plunder everything, at which time there is a lot of fear and we become very morose and sad. The only way to come out of this is again and again to take the holy names of the Lord, keep Lord in the center, and so that we, as much as possible in this material world, do not go up and down with respect to the dualities. It is not, at the beginning, it is definitely impossible. And one has to slowly see how one is able to reduce the fluctuations up and down of this happiness, sadness, heat, cold, and the dualities, and slowly bring it down to very small perturbations when one is situated more in chanting the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna. Would somebody else like to comment on that, please? So we've seen in the chapter Canto 4, Puranjana, and how the allegory of this body to being a chariot with horses, the senses going in multiple directions. And when it is not in control, the senses pull us in multiple directions. Here again, Bharat Maharaj is telling King Raghugana what is the reality of life in terms of one is trying to enjoy in this duality with the senses, whereas it's not possible, and one has to. So the reality of what is this material world is being instructed by Maharaj Bharat to King Raghugana. Hare Krishna. So we have it's 9:42, so it's almost time. So we can close for today and continue tomorrow with 13.8.
Beautiful.
Dandavad Pranam.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Dandavad Pranam.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.